Welcome to Show Studio's live panel discussions. In these discussions, experts from all parts of the industry discuss and debate the most important Fashion Week shows of the season. Today, in the midst of Couture, we're going to be discussing Schiaparelli's Spring 2022 collection. But first, let's watch this short video for some context.
Schiaparelli is a fashion house which was founded in the late 1920s by the Italian couturier Elsa Schiaparelli. Many recognise the brand for its surrealist roots, due to the collaborations Elsa made with artists like Salvador Dali, or for their iconic shocking pink. In recent years, however, many have come to know the brand through the custom creations that the brand's current artistic director, Daniel Roseberry, has designed. Think Lady Gaga's inauguration outfit, Adele's high fashion comeback, Kim Kardashian's hulkish Christmas outfit, or Ye and Julia Fox. Elsa Schiaparelli folded her business back in 1954, and despite a relaunch, the brand never caught up to its contemporaries such as Dior and Chanel, finding itself stuck in the past. Since Roseberry joined in 2019, he's turned around the brand's fortunes. He has described his own surrealist approach as inverting reality, and collections typically feature both evening dresses and daywear, together with archive references and details featuring surreal shapes and body parts. True to the brand's past, this is the triumphantly modern vision of Schiaparelli today.
Before we begin, let's have the panel introduce themselves. My name is Benji Park. I'm a fashion content creator and journalist, and I'm joined by our lovely panel who will introduce themselves, starting with Jose.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jose. I'm a fashion designer and writer originally from Bolivia, but I'm based in Brooklyn now. I've written for ID, Paper Magazine, Dem, or Business of Fashion, and I also have experience working as a ready-to-wear and handbag designer.
And Steff?
Hi, I'm Steff Yotka. I'm the senior fashion news editor over here at Vogue Runway, and I'm streaming in from our office, which is pretty empty.
And then finally, Hanan.
Hi, I'm Hanan Besovic. I run the page I Deserve Couture on Instagram. I'm a content creator, and yeah, that's about it.
Cool. So we're going to discuss Schiaparelli's Spring 2022 collection. Firstly, who is a Schiaparelli fan? Because I feel like we're all kind of self-confessed, but I know me and Hanan particularly, but Steff, Jose, how do you feel about the brand?
I mean, I have had a Schiaparelli fascination since I was a child. I think, you know, the story of the sort of like vitriol between her and Coco Chanel is something that even if you don't love fashion, you can love a little drama. Yeah. So I think, you know, her collaborations with Dali are obviously so well known, and it's been really interesting to watch the brand sort of come alive again under Daniel's tenure. And, you know, we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but what's so interesting about what he does is he has never really, I would say up until this show, done a one-to-one interpretation of something Elsa had done before. Yeah. So you know, the Schiaparelli that Daniel created was really his own vision of contemporary surrealism. And I think it just felt so right. And it also doesn't really look like anything else, especially those early collections. They looked so different from what we were seeing at Couture. So it's hard not to get your pulse racing when you watch one of his shows, I think.
And Jose, as a journalist, is Schiaparelli a brand in general that you really enjoy sort of writing and reporting about?
I absolutely love writing about Schiaparelli. I recently wrote about sort of fashion's fascination with boobs and breasts and nipples. Obviously, Daniel was very much on the top of the list when it comes to discussing that. But I very much agree with Steff. I think it's been I always had a fascination with Elsa herself, just like the sort of persona that she was. I have the book with Mucha, Impossible Conversations, which obviously we love. But I think it's been very interesting to see what Daniel has done. He sort of created a little world inside the world. It feels very current, it feels modern, it's exciting. And as Steff was saying, like, it doesn't look like anything else, right? So I always want to know what he's doing. Like, I'm always interested. It's not like other brands where you kind of know what you're going to get.
And obviously, Hanan, your fashion's favorite meme page. But I think with that, as a fellow content creator, people don't realize that comes with a lot of nuance, and you're translating what are often quite complex themes into something that is short form in terms of someone needs to be able to understand it and communicate it immediately. Is Schiaparelli like a real joy to sort of communicate with your followers?
Yeah, I think that I do not know a person that doesn't like Daniel Roseberry Schiaparelli. I think that when it comes to the business side of it, I think that he played it very smart. Schiaparelli is a brand that represents so many things, but he focused on the thing that is going to respond the most with people, and that's surrealism, because that is kind of lacking right now in fashion. Fantasy is lacking in fashion. There is no fantasy. But I always say that considering the sudden death of Thierry Mugler, somebody who made us fall in love with fashion, Daniel Roseberry is one of the rare designers that can make people fall in love with fashion right now. So that's something that I appreciate, because he gives you a different look on fashion. So people love Schiaparelli. And from the beginning of the revival in 2013, it was a bumpy ride,
yeah.
But now it's on track. You see it everywhere now. So yeah.
I agree. I mean, the loss of fancy, I think, is something that like modern fashion is definitely struggling with. And we could talk about how the death of Mugler and Virgil and people like that has massively affected, especially this year. But before we get into that, I do want to just talk about the spring 2022 couture show, which is obviously what we're here to chat about. I just want your like immediate thoughts, not necessarily contextual, like how historic this is. What did you think about the show purely from an aesthetic perspective? Jose, I'll start with you.
I thought it was gorgeous. I have to say, I woke up yesterday and I was pretty exhausted, because like after men's, after all the coverage, after all the things that you have to do for just like a regular ready-to-wear season, you're kind of like, do I really now have to keep paying attention, right? Mm-hmm. And I woke up and I saw the show and I was like, oh, like it's sort of like revitalizing to like see the sort of thing where it's just about the fashion, right? Where it's just about like world building or fantasy building. It's not necessarily even about a narrative. It's just like really good clothes. It's just really good pieces that you just want to enjoy, right? And also coming from like a sort of design perspective, something that I enjoy about Daniel is sort of trying to see how his brain works in the problem solving of like, how do I make this art piece wearable, right? How do I make someone be able to wear this? I think it's before, when I was when you look at his lookbooks of the past few seasons, because of the pandemic, of course, they're cool, they're gorgeous, but you also know that's like, it's a shot out of many, right? Yeah. It's different when you see it on a runway show. It's different when you see sort of these things actually come to life. I think that's why people were so fascinated by like Bella Hadid wearing that, the lungs dress, because you saw it IRL, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we're so used to seeing things URL, especially like a lot of us are like very much Instagram or content people. So like, I was very excited. I think my first reaction was like, wow, this is great. And I also love the lack of color, honestly.
I think it was really interesting to see Daniel Roseberry pair back, considering I don't want to say it's easier to be surrealist or it's easier to be really sort of dramatic and performance-esque when you're filled with color, but I think it really displayed his talent, how he literally paired back to just black, white, and gold, but still conveyed a massive sort of celestial theme, touching on the classic anatomical elements of the house. It was like pure talent, and also really interesting to see how he utilized silhouette to sort of not make up for, but compensate for a lack of color. Steff, what did you think about the show?
I was incredibly moved by Daniel's honesty. In the press notes that he wrote himself, he talks about how this is a really difficult time, and fashion doesn't like to talk about bad things, if you guys haven't noticed. And so I was very moved by his willingness to sort of say, I'm having a tough time. Everyone's having a tough time. I'm not feeling color. I'm not feeling glamour necessarily. I don't want to be the celebrity designer. I just want to make something that feels emotional. And I think, when you watch the models walk, you can feel a part of Daniel's spirit coming with you, which I think is why this collection resonates so much with so many people, is because it feels really honest. And there's, obviously it is also outrageous, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of posturing. There's sort of a severity, but also a serenity. So when I woke up yesterday morning and saw, mostly black, mostly gold, mostly white, it felt like just so right for this weird time that we're living in, and also so personal for how Daniel works and what he's thinking about and sort of his own life history. And so I was just like, woof, what a delight.
And also I think the black is really, has come at a time which Daniel would have had no idea about, but the fact that we've lost, you know, greats of fashion. Virgil was a few months ago, but Mugler recently, and André Leon Talley, of course. It felt, you know, fashion is or should be in a mourning period, and Daniel has done that so well. Not even that he meant to, but he has just done it so well. And other more austere couture collections, even with their like gimmicks, like Chanel, for example, still didn't portray that feeling of like slightly disenfranchised with the industry, but still loving the design. And I think, you know, Daniel does that so well. Hanan, how do you react to it? Was it like a meme maker's dream? Was it a fashion sort of like Instagram sort of paradise? And then personally, how did it resonate with you?
Well, as far as the colors go, I like the fact that he's not going for obvious. You know, I like the fact that he's not going for shocking pink, you know, which everybody's like, oh yeah, Schiaparelli, shocking pink. Yeah. I mean, the fact that the colors were literally 3 colors. It was white, black, and gold, the whole collection. And from what I've read from the show notes is that there's a specific type of gold that they produce for Schiaparelli. So that's super interesting. I mean, as far as the content goes, for me, it's a blasphemy to meme Schiaparelli. I think that like that's something that I don't want to do. I'd rather like, I think if there is a joke, the joke is with Daniel, and Daniel is somebody who can take a joke. Because this, you know, when it's good, it's good. When the clothes are good, there is nothing to meme. But I don't know, for me, as far as this collection goes, it just gives you an insight into him. He's very interesting. He doesn't think like, you know, the rest of the designers do. You know, the rest of the designers are like going for the obvious and going for basic. I hate to say that. But he's somebody that's giving you a dream. That's somebody that's giving you ideas. Somebody that is using the codes from Schiaparelli and adding his own. And that's what I really appreciate with him. You know, he's like, and to be honest, I have to say this, you can see the references in other designers. So when I was in Paris to see the last Couture show, I had an hour with Daniel, which was AKA the best hour of my life. And I asked him, there was a dress with the round shapes. And I'm like, this is a new shape for you. Like, you don't do this usually. And he said, everybody's borrowing from Schiaparelli. Why wouldn't I borrow from other designers? And I'm like, that makes 100% sense. Because, you know, you don't have to use her references only to create a collection about her. There are so many other influences, so many other ideas that you can use. So, and we can see some of them, you know, like from Cardon to Yves Saint Laurent, you can see so many references here. And it all makes sense because it's wrapped in this shocking pink but black veil of Schiaparelli. So it makes complete sense for me.
Yeah, and I think touching on this concept of like sort of borrowing other things, being referential to other designers in the age of like Diet Prada, people have been so scared. I mean, genuinely, like I've spoken to designers where they feel like actual fear that they're going to be called out for being referential because they're stealing, rather than like actually just sort of collaborating in this fashion ecosystem, which we all should participate in, because it's important that we do all enjoy each other's creations, be that appreciating each other's writing or be that appreciating each other's sort of aesthetics. These things are crucial. Steff, I know you pointed on this fact that I think is a really interesting one to explore, which was Daniel was being still sort of referential to a house of such prestige, but also kind of participating in his own surrealism. I feel like specifically sort of the celestial nod, but there were also several theological nods. Do you think Daniel has the cachet and the power to take the brand into a generation that isn't purely referential?
Absolutely. And I think to go back to what Hanan was just saying about, you know, Elsa's work, it became the foundation of what fashion looked like. Like, she was doing artist collaborations first at a time where people were like, why would you bring Dali into a studio? Why do you want to reference Picasso? She embraced this style of design and of dress that felt really raw and really pop. And so, you know, when you say everyone's copying Schiaparelli, it's like Schiaparelli's work is the underpinning of all contemporary fashion. So it makes reinventing the house that much harder, because every time someone does an artist collab, it's like, well, you got that from Elsa. Every time someone does a trompe l'oeil dress, it's like, well, you got that from Elsa. So when Daniel came in, he really had to say, here are my codes of surrealism. And, you know, he started with those cloud dresses. And I remember in an early collection, there was a Velcro dress, and it had all of these beautiful gemstone brooches that the wearer could just sort of DIY, which I thought was such a genius way to sort of take surrealism and take trompe l'oeil and take, you know, visual effects and bring it into the 2020s. And so, you know, he's also very aware of what people are doing. He's dressing celebrities, but like we all know, he looks at the internet, he knows about the memes, like he thinks they're funny. And so I think when he sits down to design, he's very aware of who's looking at his clothing and how it's going to be received. So the combination of sort of referencing fashion in general, referencing his own history, and then bringing in those threads of Elsa-ness feels like the right chemical balance here.
If I it's, you know what, I think that Elsa never got her beads, let's put it that way, because fashion doesn't acknowledge so many things that she did. You have ready to wear, thanks to Elsa Schiaparelli. You know, ready to wear, she started the ready to wear line back in the 30s when nobody else was doing it. She had a store that people could just go in and grab clothes. All the other houses were like, that's never gonna happen. And then you have, you know, like designers and like Yves Saint Laurent is being titled as the creator of ready to wear, which is actually not true, but that doesn't make sense. That doesn't matter. But you know, like you have her who first designer that used different fabrics, nylon also, you know, like that gives you a reference to Prada. It gives you, you know, Schiaparelli is the basis of fashion. So I don't like the fact that people are like, oh yeah, you're copying this, you're copying that. It's fashion. That's it. You know, like if somebody wants to take an inspiration from that, let them. This is not, you know, intellectual property. Oh yeah, you cannot use nylon because Elsa used it. No, it just doesn't make sense. Zippers, okay, everybody in fashion should stop using zippers because Elsa used it. You know, it just doesn't, you know, people are taking it to the nth degree when it shouldn't be to the nth degree. It's fashion. Enjoy it, create it.
Yeah, I agree. I think
be my tombstone.
Elsa's personal sort of vibe, she was famously lovely and actually had like quite a hard backstory in terms of leaving a husband and everything, and then when she came up against Coco Chanel, who is obviously like a famed anti-Semite and was in close quarters with a Nazi and the Nazi party themselves, also being a member of the Nazi party herself, it's interesting to see how they went sort of tete-a-tete, and how Chanel was the brand that survived in post-war austerity. Steff, I just wanted to touch on you talking about Daniel Roseberry's celebrity era, but how that didn't necessarily define him. Jose, obviously we've seen like, now it's Foxier, but also Lady Gaga and Adele, and all of these incredible designers use Schiaparelli as a vehicle to sort of bridge the liminality between what they used to do and what they want to do. As a journalist, is that something that seems like Schiaparelli is becoming an excellent vehicle for people to do this?
I mean, I think it's been very interesting. The whole conversation around the brand has been very interesting of late, because I have even seen some commentators on Instagram that are like, okay, maybe Schiaparelli PR has to stop saying no, has to start saying no, right? Because you see a lot of people wearing the brand. I disagree. I think it's so fun when so many people wear the brand, when so many people are invited into the quote unquote fantasy, right? And I think that's something that, in a way, you also see with Mugler, right? Like with the catsuit, where you're like, and it's interesting that it's these two specific houses, right, that are so niche in terms of like who they reach to, in terms of like where you wear the clothes, etc. I think it's very interesting that it's become this sort of like celebrity/social media phenomenon, really, right? Like you can always count on like Schiaparelli going viral either way, like especially that image of Adele or Bella Hadid or whatever, right? But I think something I didn't want to touch upon on the topic of like references that we were talking about is that I think that Daniel right now exists as a designer, as the head of this specific brand, the way the brand is set up, in a very unique position where he can very much be a part of this conversation in this way. He can sort of quote unquote deliver this fantasy on the runway. He can be playful. His ready-to-wear can be this niche. It can be this specific, right? And it's because he's not helming Dior, he's not a Chanel. These bigger brands, they don't have the opportunity to be niche. They don't really today, the way they're set up, the way the industry is set up today, so global, so far reaching, they don't have the opportunity to sort of be like, I don't care, I'll be something to everyone instead of everything to everyone, right? And I think Daniel right now has this sort of beautiful moment where he can sort of build up this, like, I don't need to be a top seller. I don't need to be on every single door. I don't need to be selling to absolutely every single person. I can be niche. I can be very specific, and I can also be referential. And I think something that's interesting about him that Steff was touching upon, that he's like so connected, he's so plugged in. I think I like to see Daniel as almost like one of us, right? Like he's one of the girls. Like he's online. He knows the references. He knows what we're talking about. He knows we're talking about him. So of course he's also almost designing for this environment, right? Like he is almost participating in this conversation that is usually one-sided on its internet, and then it reaches there, versus he is talking back. That's great, but I think he's in the unique position where he can do that. I don't think every designer right now can do that. And I think we have to be very mindful of that, right? Like it's great that he does that, but he's also in the position where he can.
I'm going to jump into and say that when he opened the shop and shop in Bergdorf's this past October in New York, I mean, it's a beautiful space. He's sitting, I think, next to Oscar de la Renta, and Valentino's on the same floor. But what he told me afterwards was that within the first week, they had sold all of the cream sweaters with the gilded breasts. Yeah. And it's like, those sweaters are outrageous, mm-hmm. And they're not cheap. So you're spending a lot of money to buy a boob sweater. And I think that speaks to the same reason that celebrities flock to his clothes, is that he's designing with this, like, embracing the silliness of fashion mm-hmm. and being alive. We're not all so serious every day. Some days, yeah, you want to put on a black suit and go to the office and have no one look at you. But I think especially coming out of the pandemic and lockdown, yes, everyone is looking for a little endorphin rush, a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of like comedy in their wardrobe. And so while he does have the luxury to sort of be a smaller brand and experiment, they're not making 1,000 units of the boob sweater, it also is really resonating with an audience, and it is actually selling. And I think that's so exciting because you can see the potential for it to grow and not lose its point of view, which, as you see other brands start to grow and scale up at retail, suddenly it's like everyone's making a stretchy pant and a party dress. And this is an opportunity, I think, for Daniel to continue to embrace surrealism and embrace weirdness and actually build a business on that. And it feels like a really singular case in fashion right now.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's fascinating how he can still continuously go so viral and cross-platform as well. Like when I'm on Weibo or when I'm on TikTok or when I'm on Instagram, people are still interacting with this. And like we have 14, 15-year-olds who have no idea what haute couture is, who don't know who like Worth is, and who don't, care about Maria Grazia, for example. Like they're not participating in this dialogue, but are participating in this dialogue through Daniel Roseberry. He walks an incredible line that is so unique to him because he makes clothes that are truly beautiful and that can be interpreted without having to have this like deep contextual knowledge. But also the more you do know, the more you feel like you understand his world that he is creating. And the way he interacts with a page like Hanan has, like I Deserve Couture, it shows this like willingness to participate in the humor of fashion, but also that there's like beauty in that humor. And the more you start to make these things accessible, the more people will love your clothing. Talking about the show itself, favorite looks, favorite themes. I know we've spoken a lot about referential stuff, but just like bang, direct favorite look, I would love to know, because I feel like we all have different ones. Anyone go. Anyway, I'm not gonna like pick, just in case everyone's like mentally preparing. But if anyone has a favorite look, I know people were saying they really liked the Medusa.
I love the Medusa.
Yeah.
I think everything that has connections to Saturn. So I read that. So basically, the collection is all about outer space and then priestesses and goddesses. It's kind of like leaving this kind of dark and depressed world right now and going outer space, which makes sense with Schiaparelli because her uncle was a famous astronomer in the 1900s, and he, I think that he discovered like canals on Mars or something like that. But he was the first one that showed her the beauty of outer space. There's actually a story about her moles on her face, that he told her that they're beautiful just because they resemble a Big Dipper. So that was like, that was her first insight into outer space. So like you can see so many references to Saturn, from the bags to the clothes themselves to embellishments on the shoes, which are on the invitation of the show. There is so many references to it, but it's this like a holy show that happened. Even the venue was amazing. As far as the clothes go, I have a couple of favorites. So
I feel like holy is a really important operative word. And like Daniel fascinatingly grew up sort of within the church. He had a father who was a pastor or something. And my specialism is actually theology, interestingly, but that's another conversation for another day. I feel like it wasn't only celestial, but it was also a theological collection, which was like, it's just such a beautiful ode to his personal life without sort of seeming too sort of self-indulgent. But look, 22 had a little cross on it with these giant broad hats that were almost sort of like papal or sort of Monsignor-esque, Vatican-like, and sort of reminded me of Harris Reed as well, with these gorgeous broad rimmed hats. And then look 14 was also almost puritanical, such like an American reference to religion, kind of like they had like stepped off the Mayflower but like were turning a look. And I just thought it was gorgeous. Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. But I could talk about that for hours. So Steff and Jose, favorite looks?
Go, Steff.
Okay, I'll go.
Yeah, I feel like that should be like Steff, favorite look. Like I need to give an order. Steff, favorite look.
We need to be told what to do.
Right.
I agree. I felt like the pieces that really reference Daniel's own backstory of growing up in the church and sort of being surrounded by a very religious family felt like you were getting a little peephole into his own psychology and his own psyche, which, it can be hard at a brand like Schiaparelli, where you're making a cape like this, to let your own story shine. We've talked about how Elsa's story is so laden and there's so many avenues you could go down. So I loved all the ones that you pointed out. I also think, what is this? 8, look 8 kind of reminded me of a bishop's vestment. And then also look 9 had this very severe, almost like austere silhouette that, you can see, if you're really looking closely, you can pick up on the Christian and the Catholic references in all of these pieces. It's the sign of the cross. It's just like a nice little nod, something, a little secret buried underneath the gold and the gems. And then we have in 11 is that Delone has like this beautiful halo, this golden halo that I just feel like the celebrities are going to be fighting over. Like fist fights are going to break out for this look and this headpiece in particular.
Yeah, no, stylists are emailing as we speak. Like, absolutely. I also very much love Delone's look, the look 11. I also just love to see the evolution of the sort of body plate. We've seen so much of it from Kim Kardashian Hulk. We've seen sort of the shocking pink muscle suit, etc. I think it's been very interesting to see how it becomes reinterpreted to fit the narrative that he's now trying to talk about, right? I think this is where it becomes exciting, where you start, as Steff was saying, getting those hints of Daniel himself, of his existence, of his life, or like the things that he's experienced. But then you also start seeing how he's building it into the world, right? Like on screen, we have like the bag, we have the like all of that like molded leather, which is great. It's so cool, the muscles, etc. But now you see it on like, let me find a look on look 19, for example. So special, so cool. you get the narrative of the collection, you get the feel, but you still see the evolution of the sort of codes that he started to play with. You still get the belly button, you still get like the sort of very graphic body plate, but then you sort of evolve it into he shows you that he can mold it into whatever he wants it to be, right? Like he can mold it into the narrative. And I think that's what's becoming very special about Daniel, and like his eye into the brand, that he started with all of these sort of little motifs or symbols that talk back to the brand itself, but now he's bending them into what he wants them to be. And I think that's what's exciting for me.
Yeah. Oh, it was just such a good collection. I feel like I could talk about this for hours, but I will just say also for me, I thought look 10 was incredible. It was kind of like the least, I guess, like architecturally interesting look, but it had this gorgeous, it was kind of like a chasuble, which is this liturgical item of religious clothing, which is often what like priests and things will wear when they're doing sermons, with this incredible embroiderment on it that was just gorgeous, and it was like horses of heaven. It was just incredible. I just want to talk about accessories though real quick, because those are a gay's best friend. Maggie Joy Maurer with like a head bust kind of reminded me of Gucci, but I just thought she is the perfect like muse to cast into like a head bust carrier. Obviously Peter Doe adores her, and it seems like Daniel Roseberry does too. What did you think about Schiaparelli accessories, and is there a commercial aspect to them here? You know, do you think these are the pieces that people will actually sort of think to themselves, I would love to buy that, and that will translate into the ready-to-wear collections? I'll start with Hanan, just because I feel like you often sort of talk to an audience that is interested in consumption as much as just viewership.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that like as far as accessories go, you know, I think that Daniel has a super smart approach to fashion when it comes to accessories. You know, kind of like going above and beyond when it comes to jewelry. You know, you literally can take any magazines of the newsstand, you will see Schiaparelli earrings in it. You know, so even if you have just a headshot on the magazine, they need something strong. Usually, it ends up being Schiaparelli earrings. So as far as the bijou of Schiaparelli goes, it's making its way all around. It's being used in the music videos. Cardi B used it for Rumors with Lizzo. It's in many videos, and it's a statement piece. As far as the accessories go, I have a really bad experience with Schiaparelli accessories, just because once I almost knocked over a Schiaparelli bag. So that's kind of a painful subject for me.
Quite traumatic.
It was when I was in the showroom, I was trying to take a picture of the Bella Hadid's lungs dress. So I was walking back, and then I almost knocked over a bag. And that's when the PR called me, I destroyed Couture. And I'm like, that is so funny. But as far as the accessories go, it is what we want to see. There was a golden baguette. Why? Why not? I mean, you know, it has, and Maggie's head is just, you know, the peak of surrealism. And it just does make sense. I mean, even the earrings, you know, we know that Daniel is very, let's say, known for using body parts. When it comes to Schiaparelli, you have earrings that have, you know, a woman's naked torso on it. And, you know, it's beautiful and it's fun. It's a statement piece. And this is like something that I always look forward to, because it gives you another atmosphere of revelation when it comes to Daniel's mind. You know, it just gives you good stuff. The bags have like legs on them. You know, it's hilarious and it's fun. So for me, like his accessories, you know, the last thing that one of my favorite things that he did is the necklaces from the Zodiac collection from 1938.
Yes, I want the Cancer one. I want the Cancer one.
You're the Cancer also? I'm a Cancer also.
I'm a Cancer.
Oh my God, Cancers as well. I won't go through like birthdays, but I see you guys. Sorry.
So you know, like it's just fun and it's referential and it's everything that I want fashion to be. You know, it's Daniel Roseberry and Schiaparelli. At this point, it doesn't get better than this.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Jose, I actually just wanted to ask you, do you think, because my mind is racing, do you think that we've spoken a lot about celebrity culture, but having Kanye and Julia Fox at the forefront of the show with their very like tumultuous relationship, I feel like I have now seen more pictures of them at the show than the show itself, which I don't often see with Schiaparelli. Do you think that this is sort of towing the line between them participating in celebrity culture and being overwhelmed by celebrity culture, specifically for this show?
Absolutely, because I was actually just thinking about that too, right? I think a lot of the conversations that I've seen online, both on Twitter and on Instagram, have been around Julia and like, what jeans is she wearing? Is she actually wearing Daniel's jeans?
They sold out.
Are they actually Carhartt? Are they on Amazon? They're sold out. Oh my God, who did the makeup? Oh, it was Ye. And then there's the memes and there's conversations, right? I'm like, oh, I wonder what Kim Kardashian is doing right now. Like the conversation has been so about that. And I think it's interesting, but I think it also sort of definitely drives attention away from the brand, right? Which we, as you said, we don't usually see. We don't usually see that like sort of the surrounding takes over. But I think it's also because a lot of the collections or a lot of the work that has also gone viral over the last couple of seasons, there wasn't a show, there wasn't a front row, there wasn't sort of a celebrity or paparazzi, there wasn't this sort of PR moment, right? And in these couple of seasons, we've seen Daniel blow up, right? We've seen his vision for the house blow up, his designs blow up. So I think it's going to be very interesting moving forward how they toy with that. Because let's be honest, they have their pick of guests, right? They can invite them, or they can invite Lady Gaga, or they can invite Cardi B. There's so many people that would just attend because they wear the brand so often. So I think the conversation is going to start going around the celebrities, because I think it's inevitable. I think that's sort of what happens, right? It happened with Kenzo as well a bit.
But that's what I wanted to say. I mean, like whatever they lost from the media attention, they gained from the Kenzo show, because the Kenzo. I mean, I hate to say it, Kenzo had a great show, but the focus was Julia wearing Schiaparelli. So whatever they lost, Schiaparelli lost from like the media and focus on the collection, they gained the day earlier with this hype. Oh, who is Julia wearing at Kenzo? Oh, it's Schiaparelli. So they kind of broke even at the end of the day, which, to be honest, I'm kind of shocked from the Kenzo PR. Why didn't they put her in something Kenzo?
Well, they threw her the blanket on.
I feel like Kanye would have excused.
They tried. They definitely tried.
Yeah, they do you not think Kenzo was sending fat PR boxes to Julia Fox and Kanye West was hiding them in the closet? 1,000%. Steff, I just wanted to ask, since you're Vogue Runway, would Vogue Runway ever consider including a snapshot of something like Kanye and Julia at the show alongside the show photos, because it becomes so integral to the conversation of the show as like a cultural snapshot? I know so many of us use Vogue Runway and you read about the culture of, you read about the context of the collection, but often not about the context in which the collection was received. Is that something that Vogue Runway would ever consider including?
Great question. I will say we ran this big feature that everyone's seeing on Julia's getting ready from the show, which we were sort of working on hand in hand with our show coverage. I can't say the number of texts that I received from Schiaparelli's like PR team from Friday to Monday morning. It was like I literally couldn't put my phone down because they're like, she's wearing this, she has this, they're making this. And I think, you know, having Julia be a part of the Schiaparelli conversation is so great to me because she's actually like part of Daniel's creative community. You know, Richie Kahn, who goes by Richie Shazam and is a photographer, is like one of Daniel's oldest friends, and Richie and Julia are best friends. So even though like it comes with Kanye and it's this huge moment that you almost like, it's like a supernova, you can't look away, like the light shines so bright. It's also like very much about Daniel's New York story, the people that he hangs out with here in New York. And I think it was very cool that he dressed her in an outfit that was literally his. You know, she's sort of doing Daniel Roseberry drag at the Kenzo show. And I just want to say, I've gotten the inside scoop on the jeans. They're vintage Carhartt, so you can't buy them new.
Oh my gosh, because they sold out on Amazon. They sold out in 4 hours.
It is different though. I was just talking about this.
It's a sisterhood of the traveling pants scenario because they actually belong to Adam Selman, and Daniel had borrowed them from Adam and Julia had borrowed them from Daniel. So I think they're now like the holy grail.
Obsessed.
Because they've like witnessed, I'm sure Rihanna has touched these pants. Like, you know, there's a lot of narrative here. in the jeans.
Bolton needs to get his hands on those and put them in the mat. I want that in the Met Gala. That needs to be there now, Andrew.
A lexicon of American fashion, like put the pants in. But I thought it was cool too that when he made her the custom look, it was like a real marriage of how she's been dressing recently, which is very like hot girl matrix, but it also incorporated Daniel's own motifs, like this sort of conical bust and the dramatic earring. So, I mean, I was very into it. Would we put this in the review? We have pretty strict gallery requirements for how the images look, but I'll talk to our tech team and see what's possible.
Oh my gosh, give me a little shout out if it happens. I do want to, just because of time, I do want to move on to one final concluding topic. I do just want to say, I think it's really interesting how Julia has been received by the media. People act like she just like popped out of nowhere, but she's been in these fashion circles for a long time. I think it's fascinating how we're an industry that is dominated around mostly creating women's and sort of dressing and talking about women's bodies, and the moment a woman pops up, we're like, which man is she with? When Julia's had a very successful career on her own, and like she said in an interview recently, she's dated billionaires. Like, she doesn't need Kanye for the money or the clout. And interestingly, if he had brought a man with him, obviously the romantic interest aside, everyone would have been like, what's this guy done? Like, what's he done in fashion? How's he involved in Yeezy? I feel like she's had disproportionate slack. I do want to sort of conclude with this topic of revived houses as an interesting sentiment to end on, which is there is a fair point that I've read people making recently, which is, shouldn't we be pumping money into the new blood of fashion, which is more diverse and more representative, rather than reviving dead houses or houses that sort of die down, like Courrèges or Poiret's failed revival, and ultimately Schiaparelli, which has obviously been extremely successful both creatively and commercially. I've heard in the peripheries that they're trying to revive a V&A as well, which I'm not too sure about. But what do you think about this idea of revival fashion houses? Steff, I'm going to start with José, because I haven't started with you yet, and I feel like I want to give you a little start.
You would start. I think it's interesting. I think it is fair when you talk about sort of the emerging designer landscape, and you're like, why are you not giving? Like, why is LVMH, say, giving, I don't know, Rihanna money to start Fenty, but you're not giving insert emerging designer to start brand, right? I think the narrative is pretty obvious as to why that happens, right? Rihanna's Rihanna. But I think the conversation when it comes to reviving houses is very interesting, because why not? Why can't you have both, right? Like, why can't you pluck Daniel Roseberry, who's insanely talented, who has done amazing work at Thom Browne, and put him here? Why can't you grab like all of these designers that are like career-long designers, right? That aren't like right out of school, or that have had their own brands, or have worked. Like I work at a fashion brand right now. There's people that are insane. I'm going to be the next insert whatever famous designer. And the other half were like, I want to work at a brand. I want to be a part of something, right? You can have both. You can do both. And I think if the focus is to nurture creatives, if it's to nurture fashion, we should do both, right? You can sort of like grab a brand like Schiaparelli and be like, can we revive it? How can we do that? How do you make it modern? How do you make it contemporary? How do you make it now? Something that Daniel has done an amazing job at, right? Or you can grab another designer and be like, oh, you should have a brand. Let me give you money. You have this sort of idea, or you have this sort of narrative that you can stretch into turning into a big brand, right? I think the conversation is a lot more nuanced than like we should do one or the other, because I think we should do both. And I think you also don't only have to think about who's at the helm, right? You have to think about everyone else. Like, people forget that there's design assistants and associates and designers and design directors. Like, I'm one of those people, right? That people forget about when everyone's talking about the brand I work for. So like, I think it's important that you think of like, when you revive a brand, you also open the doors for so many other people. So I think if the conversation is about nurturing designers, I think it's valid. Although I do think you have to be very careful with how you revive the brand, right? You still there's still this sort of narrative around, for example, Vienna, like, what is that going to be? I remember there was a rumor that like they wanted to revive Charles James, right? And it was like with Zach Post and whatever. And there was this whole, and I was like, oh, that works, like Zach Post, and that kind of tracks, right? But imagine someone else, imagine a completely different contemporary designer reviving Charles James. That doesn't add up, right? I think you still have to be very careful with how you go about it, but I don't see why we shouldn't do it.
I Deserve Couture. Do you want to weigh in? We're kind of kindred spirits in that we're not, I don't want to call us like fashion outcasts, but like we are people who just like, we are just like outsiders who loved and adored fashion and fashion history, and now, you know, happen to have like actually pretty massive audiences. I mean, you are literally bouncing around everywhere on Instagram, and every time I open Instagram, I check out your page. So what do you think about revival houses?
I do the same thing on TikTok when it comes to you. I'm like, did Benji post something?
Stop, now you have to say that, but I love you for it. I love you for it.
Hey, we have to stick together. Why not? Why not? I think every house was created with a mission. Every house has something to say. Courrèges actually is one of the brands that is kind of like, you know, it's on its way to a revival. Jose, your dog? I'm kidding.
I'm like,
I was like, who's got a dog?
I'm kidding. But you know, like Courrèges is on its way to a revival. Cavalli also is doing stuff. You know, like you see that there is stuff going on in fashion.
Yeah.
And I love that. When it comes to like reviving brands, like for example, like Jacques Fass, for example, it would be interesting just because I want to see how glamour of the 50s, like for example, right now, GmbH had a menswear that collection that was extremely inspired by Jacques Fass in 50s. And it everybody reacted so well to it that I want to see more. I want to see Jacques Fass, the house. I think we already mentioned, you know, when Schiaparelli had a revival, it was just an event for a season. Christian Lacroix designed, I think, first 2 collections, and after that he left. So, and I think the problem with the revivals like that, you kind of have to do its justice. You know, Christian Lacroix revived, had a first collection for Schiaparelli, and it was a static one. It was just on mannequins, and that's not the way to do Schiaparelli. You know, it's about movement, it's about silhouette, it's about, you know, there's other things when it comes to Schiaparelli. So as far as the houses go, reviving them or investing in the new designers, do both. You know, fashion is not poor. They can definitely, you know, these conglomerates, they can definitely afford that. You know, we're not talking about people that are struggling. We're talking about.
I don't think Arnaud is counting his pennies, but I agree. We should be doing both, and I think it's important that we do both. And also, you know, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful to see a revived house look back. Exactly. And as, you know, fashion history lovers, it's just wonderful to see that reimagining and that representation. Steff, obviously, Vogue Runway is like a complete kind of like department store of little referential ideas, and like anytime you want to know what's happening, even if it doesn't load sometimes, we love it and we'll look for everything. When you see a designer like Schiaparelli, does your heart sort of like leap a little bit because you're like, oh my god, we have so many incredible references and people will be able to use our platform so well for it?
Definitely. I mean, keeping people on the Vogue Runway app, even if the GIFs take a while to load, my apologies.
No.
We know it's not you.
It's definitely a goal. And I think, you know, like we talked about before, Daniel is really pulling from all of these different designers. He's doing Gaultier, maybe he's doing a little bit of Mugler, he's touching on Cardin. And, you know, we have an amazing colleague here, Laird, who's our archivist, who like is looking at the Schiaparelli show and painstakingly writing down every reference with the hopes that she will go into our physical archive and be able to digitize the scans. So it gives us a fun project to get to work on something from the past and really tether the past to the present and try to like keep that fashion history alive. And to go back to the point about established brands and new designers. I do think we're on the precipice of a new model. Kering has partnered with Kirby and Raymond to launch Your Friends in New York, and they're giving a lot of money to emerging designers in the United States. And I get the sense that part of Virgil's estate planning, if you want to call it that, at Vuitton included some kind of like young talent, emerging designer program that was announced sort of at the end of last year before his death. And hopefully, you know, they continue to sort of find designers and put resources and finances behind new people. And so I think, you know, if we get that balance, like Jose was saying, where you have something like this beautiful sleeping beauty, as people will call it, Schiaparelli, that's really come back to life, but you're also taking the opportunity to like find the new things. And one of the things that I really like in fashion is when an emerging house collaborates with a younger designer. Like Etro gave Harris Reed some fabrics. McQueen donates a lot of its materials to like St. Martin students and designers across London. I think like if that ecosystem continues to flourish, everyone wins, right? That emerging houses get a lot of resources. The established houses are able to not throw out tons of fabric and maybe get some new ideas. So hopefully we can keep moving into this like super collaborative shared economy.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, just quick shout out to McQueen, because like being a Londoner, I think they are the most incredible house who like curate and take care of, and are really just the most gorgeous team ever, who love the next generation of fashion. Just because of time restraints, we are going to come to sort of like final thoughts. So anything you think about the collection, or anything we've touched on today that you would like to elaborate on more, but more sort of final thoughts for the collection and what we think we'll see from Daniel Roseberry next, perhaps. I thought this was a gorgeous collection, but I love Schiaparelli, and I have always loved Schiaparelli, and in fact lots of my sort of like viral content is Schiaparelli, so I kind of like owe Daniel Roseberry a drink if you want to take me up on it. But I deserve couture. Can we start with you for some closing thoughts?
Sure. For me, it was as far as the collection goes and the whole show, I think it was done very well. We got used to kind of like Schiaparelli set up a precedent for themselves as far as the videos go during the pandemic. But it's interesting to see that they transform that energy from the video and put it in a show. So for me, it was a success in all possible ways. Schiaparelli is having their 1930s again. It's the brand. That's it. There is nothing to add, honestly. I mean, like it's beautiful clothes. There's a thought behind everything being put there. There is passion, there is emotion, and these are the pieces that we're going to see in the museums.
And I agree with you 1000%. Jose, what about you?
I mean, talking about the show specifically, I think it was a hit. I think it's very successful. It excites me and makes me curious about what sort of is coming from Daniel. And I think talking generally, I kind of want to rescue something that Steff said, that was sort of that anecdote of how well the sweater with the boot plates sold. I'm very curious to see what comes next as he starts having this sort of quote unquote commercial success, right? Like what happens past the celebrity, what happens past the viral content, what happens past the, wow, this is great, we love you, Daniel, right? Like it's beautiful when all the fashion fans sort of come together to love a designer and like prop them up. But I think it's also very beautiful when you see someone on the street wearing it, right? When you see people really become the girl, right? And I'm very curious and I'm very excited to see what comes of his vision for the brand the more that happens.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm just very excited about it. I think, as Steff said as well, there's so much to build on, and I'm so excited to see how he refines the vision, but also sort of expands the possibilities of it when it comes to the customer, to the ready-to-wear, to who the quote-unquote girl is, right? And also some menswear.
I agree. No, I agree. I would love some menswear. I know what you mean. And I think seeing it in Dover Street, it's in Dover Street Market in London, but also in Bergdorf's in New York. Just like incredible clothing, just gorgeous, gorgeous, wonderful clothing. And it will be fascinating to see how he expands that sort of like Rain. I haven't actually seen anyone at Fashion Week. I've seen one person wearing Schiaparelli. I haven't seen anyone else sort of wearing like street style Schiaparelli yet, but I would adore to see that. Steff, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone said. I think we're all really looking forward to the ready to wear collection that's going to come. I guess it will be the end of February or the beginning of March, to see, is Daniel going to stay on the same tack? Are we going to get more black, more severe, more sacred, or will ready to wear be this hard pivot back to color and fanciful drama? But I hope that by the end of Couture Week, this Thursday or Friday, this collection is still looming large in people's minds. You know, there's so much being said here, and it can be so easy to get distracted, let's say, by all of the gold and the accessories and all of the things that like we really love. But like this black dress, like the tailoring and the construction on these garments is mental. And I just like, let's get some zoomed in photos. Let's get some behind the scenes photos from the atelier. Please, Schiaparelli PR, if you're watching this, release the images.
Where are the detail shots?
Yeah, where are the detail shots? Because I think there's so much to learn here and so much to appreciate. And I hope that, like, you know, the fashion cycle can really move on to the next story. And I hope that in a week, in a month, in 2 months, we're still thinking about all of the ideas and, you know, all of the conversation starters that Daniel put out here for Couture.
And just to add one more thing to say, if we're going to judge by what Chanel did today, we're definitely going to remember Schiaparelli, because yeah.
Babe, a horse does not make a collection. A horse does not make a collection. No, I agree. And Daniel Roseberry, if you're watching and you want to send the 4 of us to come to Schiaparelli, then we travel business class and we like refreshments. And you got a little like TikTok, Instagram, and a journalist, and a like runway archivist journalist. Like, you got the whole package here with the 4 of us.
If you have any extra jeans, hit us up.
It's like Spice Girls.
We're the Spice Girls. So I will conclude by saying thank you to all of our panelists and our virtual audience for watching. For more extensive Fashion Week coverage, be sure to visit showstudio.com. And if you're watching via Show Studio's YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below, and we will see you next time. Thank you to all of you wonderful, beautiful people for humoring me.
Thank you.
Thank you.